Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is on the member tools and reports that are located in BNI Connect. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to dive a little bit deeper beyond the home screen of BNI Connect and take a look at some of the other things that we can do within the system. So there's a ton of statistical reports and little tools and functions that might be able to help you in your membership and help you in your chapters and possibly even just give you a greater insight into your membership. So before we get started, and while people are still getting connected here, a couple of housekeeping things. Today's webinar is a live presentation, so that means that if you have any questions as we're going through anything today, please do feel free to ask those questions. The best way to do that is by typing your question into the question control panel. I'll see that pop up on my screen and I'll be able to answer it right away. We're scheduled for about 30 minutes worth of content. We like to keep these nice and quick so that you can get back on with your busy days and your busy lives. That being said, if people do have questions, I am always happy to stay on these webinars as long as you have questions until every single question is answered. So don't be shy. Feel free to ask away. The webinar is also being recorded, so that means it will be made available for you to review it later. There's two different ways that you can review the webinars afterwards. The first way is if you are in BNI Connect, in the upper right-hand corner, there is a little question mark. That question mark will bring you to the support page, which is support.bniconnect.com. On the support page, you'll see our list of webinars, and if you scroll down just a little bit, in Chapter Training and Documentation, you'll see recorded webinars. They're done chronologically by month here, and you can review any of the past webinars just by playing them here, or you can play them full screen, or you can go over to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. We have even more content up here. Besides the recorded webinars, we have a bunch of educational moments, little short 3 to 5 minute videos on specific topics. We have messages from Dr. Meisner. We have pre-release demonstrations and all sorts of stuff up here on our YouTube channel. All right, so let's get started with today's content. And again, this is going to be on the member tools and reports. After logging into BNI Connect, you should see this page as a member, and this is your home screen, your home page, your landing page, and on here is where we would do all of this stuff like submit our weekly slips, so our referrals, our one-to-ones, our CEUs, and all that's done right here from the home screen. So you have all the submit options. We have a whole webinar dedicated to that, so I'm not going to go too far into that today. But one thing that you may or may not realize right on the home screen is that there is your personal POMS report here, your activity for the last 12 months and your lifetime. Now, if you'd like to get more specific about your membership and your statistics, right to the right of where it says My BNI Business, it says My Personal Participation Report. Now, this is a report that goes into detail about the last 12 months of your membership. So if I was to click on My Personal Participation Report, this will pull up my statistics for my personal membership for the past 1 year. So we can see that it has a week-by-week snapshot of everything that happened, whether I was present or absent or late or had a substitute. RGI, of course, is referrals given inside, or Tier 1 referrals. Either I referred myself to another member or another member of my chapter referred themselves to me. RGO is an outside referral. Referrals received both inside and outside. Visitors, one-to-ones, thank you for closed business, and CEUs. And I can see week by week by week what happened in my membership. It gives me some totals down here at the bottom. Now, what this report is really useful for is if you're ever looking at your statistics, let's say I'm back here on the home screen and I'm looking at this page, I say, you know what? I've only had 45 referrals received in the last month, or I only had 67 one-to-ones. That number doesn't seem right. I could go into this personal participation report and figure out where the error is. Maybe there was a week when I was maybe marked absent when I'm sure I was there that week, or I'm sure I had a substitute. But I can then take this information back to my vice president and say, hey, you know what? On April 24th, I really think that I had a substitute that week. Can we double check the records? And if necessary, can we fix that in the database? It'll also show you here the total for your attendance. It will also show you any members that you've sponsored in the last 12 months. And finally, it will show you the trainings that you have attended in the past 12 months. All right, so now let's start looking at some things beyond the home page. Now, a lot of people say, you know what, I don't really know where to go to find stuff or where to do stuff in BNI Connect. I find it very confusing. Well, one thing to keep in mind is that as a web application, there is a lot of stuff in there, and we can't squeeze it all in on the home page, so we do have to go into some of the menus a little bit deeper. The way I always remember things in BNI Connect is you'll notice that there are these different menus up on top: network, operations, reports, tools, and admin. Now, depending on your level in BNI, what roles you have, you may only see a couple of these options. More than likely, you're going to see the network, operations, and reports. When it comes to network, this is all the social media functions. So if I want to go find connecting with people or participating in the discussion groups or the testimonials, that's where I would go for the network options. Operations is more input and tools, whereas reports is output. So if I want to do something or enter something into BNI Connect, I'm going to go to operations. If I want to get statistics or data or lists back out, I'm generally going to go to reports. Now let's go to operations quickly and take a look at a couple of things here. So if I go to operations chapter, if you're on the leadership team, if you're a president or a vice president or a secretary treasurer, you'll probably come here quite often. But a couple of things that you can do as a general member here that you might find useful. The first of which is that if you happen to have visitors that will be coming to a meeting that you invited to the meeting, a great thing to do is under Manage Visitor, click on Register a Prospective Visitor. Now, this is a pretty straightforward form that you fill out. You just let them know all the details of the visitor. But the great thing about registering a prospective visitor for an upcoming meeting is that that visitor will now get an email reminding them to go to the meeting. So they'll get a confirmation that they are registered to visit your meeting. They will get a reminder 2 days before the meeting. It'll also inform your leadership team and director, consultant, and visitor hosts that you have a visitor that will be coming to the meeting. So Drew says, why would I not have that showing? So when it comes to BNI Connect, all of the different items here may or may not appear depending on, again, your access levels. So for example, vice presidents, when they go to enter the POMs for a week, they would go to meeting management and enter POMs. Now, unless you are a vice president, you probably won't see this meeting management option at all. So does that make sense, Drew? So if something's not showing that you think should be showing, my recommendation is to go and talk with your director consultant or your executive director and say, hey, I saw this option on BNI Connect. How come it's not there? So when it comes to managing visitors, if you're a visitor host, you'll probably see Add a Visitor and Manage Visitor. If you are just a member, probably the only option you'll see is Register a Prospective Visitor. Cool? All right. So the other tool that I wanted to show you on here is under Create Email. Now, under Create Email, there's a couple of great options here. The first of which is email my chapter. If you've ever had to get a message out to your whole chapter, it can oftentimes be very difficult to do that because you're out there trying to collect all the email addresses, and a lot of times before BNI Connect, the way that I would send an email to my chapter is I'd go and I'd find the most recent message that was sent to the group, and then I would hit reply all and kind of hope that it got to everybody. But there was always the new people that weren't on the list yet and the people that might have left the chapter that no longer want to receive those emails. But if you click on Email My Chapter, you will get a current list of all of the members in your chapter's email addresses. So all you need to do is to highlight these, copy them, and then just go start up an email in whatever program you might be using. So I happen to be using Outlook. I do recommend putting them in the BCC line. I could just type out my message and click Send. And now I can be sure that it's going to the most current email addresses for everybody in my chapter. We do have another question here from Kathleen. Kathleen says, do you have a location as to where we should enter a substitute name? And isn't this something that we need to track? So right now there is no handling of substitutes or substitute names here in BNI Connect. For the visitor hosts, there is a way to track a guest that comes to a meeting that you want to capture their information, but you don't necessarily want that to go into the POMS report because then it affects your conversion ratio for your chapter. So a visitor host does have the ability to basically track a visitor, but not necessarily give POMS credit for it. Does that make sense, Kathleen? Excellent. All right, so also under this Create Email, there's another great function that allows you to send an invitation to a visitor. So if you've ever been to a networking event and you're talking to somebody and you're saying, yeah, why don't you come to my BNI meeting? And then you have to go back and you have to somehow get the information about your BNI meeting to them. So where to show up and what to bring and what time to show up and the location of your chapter and a little bit of information but not too much information about BNI. We take out all the guesswork for you, and you can use email visitor invitation. So if I click this email visitor invitation, all I have to do is fill out a couple of pieces of information. So let's say I met Steve Elliott from BNI Arizona, and I'd like to invite him to my chapter meeting. I'm going to put my own email address in here so that we can see what it looks like. Now the personal message is going to be the first paragraph of this email that goes out. So I could go and I could say, it was great meeting you at the networking event. I would love to introduce you to my referral team. Once I click send, it'll take that information, put it into a custom template that's on the back end, and send out a visitor invitation. And in just a second, I should have that in my email, and here it is. So this is the visitor invitation. It says, my chapter wants to meet you. It has a great BNI image in there. It addresses it to Steve. Dear Steve, it was great meeting you at the networking event, so it puts my custom introductory paragraph there. But then the cool part is that all the other information that I would have to think up and type out on my own is automatically inserted in there. So it puts in the name of my chapter. You're invited to this meeting at the Elks Club. Where we're located. We're located at 60 Belmont Ave in Wakefield, and we meet on Thursdays at 7 a.m. Then it describes just a little bit about BNI, lets them know that we're looking for somebody in his position, and to please RSVP. It does sign it from you, and if they hit reply to this, the reply to address is your email address. So this will go back to you if they hit reply. Let's see. Kathleen has a question. She says, does a copy of this email go someplace for us to see ourselves? this email is just a very quick template that goes out. If you'd like to see what the email looks like, just send one to yourself like I just did. But other than that, we're not storing any email addresses or information or building a database of your contacts or anything like that. It is just a one-time use. Send out a quick invitation message. So unfortunately, no, you can't blind copy yourself either. It just goes out to the one recipient. But again, if you'd like to see what it looks like, just send a quick invitation to yourself. All right, Christine has a question as well. Christine says, is there a BNI Connect app in the works so we can log our one-to-ones, referrals, etc. from our smartphones? And there is an app that's in the very, very early prototype phases right now. It's going to be going out for first-level analysis in the course of the next couple of months. Still have quite a ways of development to go on that, but it's definitely something that is in process as we speak. So it is coming. Now, just so you know, although BNI Connect is not built specifically for mobile devices, I have an Android phone. I enter almost all of my referrals and one-to-ones using my mobile phone. It isn't sized perfectly well. You know, I do have to do a little pinching and blowing up to see things, but it does accept the data, and I am able to both look up and enter data using my mobile devices. But yes, something is in the works. Does that help, Christine? All right, so a lot of the other things under operations are built for leadership teams, but let's take a look at some of the reports. So to go to the reports, again, let's go to Reports, Chapter. Now, there are a ton of reports here, just a whole lot of great information at your fingertips. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these. We only have about 13 minutes left or so. What I wanted to do was show you a couple of my favorite reports that you might find useful in your chapter and for your membership. So the first of which is always the chapter roster report. This one is just a great one if you just need all of the names and phone numbers of everybody in your chapter. This is also a really useful report because not only does it show you, of course, all the roster of your chapter below with a quick snapshot of their activity, the POMS report, their phone number, their company name, but at the top it also gives you your leadership team. So if you're having an issue with your chapter or with somebody in your chapter, you need to contact the membership committee. You're not really sure who's on the membership committee. Go to the chapter roster report. This will give you all of the people. I can see the people that are on my membership committee. I can give one of them a call if I need to, who my president is, who the vice president is. And again, it's all right there at my fingertips. A lot of times it is a good idea to talk to your director consultant, especially if you have any ideas for improvement for your chapter, or if you just like to talk something through. Your director consultant can be a wealth of information, so their contact information is here as well. So that's the chapter roster report. The next report, I'm going to skip down a couple here. The meeting notes report. Now, this one can actually help you to improve the number and quality of referrals that you are giving on a weekly basis in your chapter. Now, this report is a very simple report in the way it looks, but it has some pretty far-reaching implications. So if I click on Go, you'll see that this report, all it does is give me the member names, their company, and then a blank space. This report was designed to be printed. You can either click the print button here, and you'll see it'll print out and give me a place to take notes. Giving referrals, the best way to increase that is, aside from doing one-to-ones with other members, is when people are giving their 60-second or 45-second, their weekly presentations at the chapter meetings, We need to be paying attention to what they're saying, and a great way to do that is to write down what they're talking about. So just the act of writing something down will help to embed it in your memory, but even better, you could take this sheet with you throughout the week and be able to refer back to it. Now, this is a report that I actually think works better in its exported format. Almost all of the reports in the system, you'll see up here in the upper right-hand corner a couple of options besides the print button. Export and export without headers. Export without headers means that it's not going to include all this information at the top. So that's the button I usually use. You'll see that it just downloaded in Excel here. And when I open that up, I have to enable editing. But you'll see now I can go through and make adjustments to this. One of my favorite buttons in Excel, by the way, is this Format as Table button, which allows me to give it a color scheme. And now it allows me to do some sorting and things like that. But this report, maybe I want to be able to take notes during the chapter meeting using my mobile device or using like a tablet or a laptop. This allows me to take notes electronically. If I wanted to print it out and maybe just wanted to, let's say, increase the amount of space that I had for taking notes, I could do that as well. One thing we do in our chapter is we pass a sheet around and everybody writes in their specific referral for the week. Then one person in the chapter goes back and fills this out and then emails it out to the whole chapter so that we can know what people are asking for and be reminded of it throughout the week. All right, so that's the meeting notes report. The summary POMS report, that is the bread and butter of statistics for your chapter. You can run this report, by the way, for any time period you want to. So by default, it's only going to be the last 6 months, but you can actually choose any length of time you want to. So our chapter started sometime around 2001. Let's say I wanted to go back to when the chapter started. I can go back before they started through, let's say, today, and click Include Dropped Members or Exclude Dropped Members. Now what this will do is this allows me to go back and say, let's see, what is our grand total for our chapter in, let's say, thank you for closed business since we've been around? And what's the grand total number of presents and referrals given? And when it comes to my own personal membership here, I can have a look and let's see who's been to the most BNI meetings in our chapter. And it looks like that's Frank Karpowitz in our chapter. He's been to 459 BNI meetings, just a couple more than I have in the chapter. So this is a great way to look into more details about your chapter and about your membership. The next report I want to show you, I'm going to skip down a couple again, is the Classifications Not in Chapter report. Now, this one is great for giving you some ideas for inviting visitors to your chapter. So if I click on Go, it's a pretty straightforward, simple report. All it does is show us two things. It shows us a classification, and then it shows us the number of chapters in our region that already have this position filled. So, for example, plumber. We do not have a plumber in our chapter. However, there are 6 other chapters in our area that do have a plumber. Now, that tells me a couple of things. It means that we should probably look to fill that position in our chapter. But it also tells me that it's a fairly popular position in our region. So when I'm approaching plumbers to invite them to come to our chapter meeting, I might be able to refer them to other plumbers to let them know that, yes, BNI works for plumbers, and we have some successful plumbers in our area in BNI. It's also great because that means that we're not competing with other chapters in order to fill that position. So there's a greater chance that they will join our chapter. So let's see, Kathleen has a question here. Said classifications, if we were to split some of these, i.e. life, disability, long-term care, can those be split out for each position? So again, if you're splitting these categories, that's actually accommodated for here. For example, we have our our mortgage category split. Now, because our person in our chapter is listed as a residential mortgage person, the main category of mortgages is listed as being available. So you do have to kind of pay attention to what's listed here, because only your specific categories in your chapters will be excluded from this list. I don't know if does that kind of make sense, Kathleen? So the trick is to make sure that they are specifically categorized on their membership as being specifically life, and then the disability person will show up here. So they couldn't be listed as life, disability, and long-term care as the position. One other strategy with this is, let's say that you are looking for a plumber or printing services. You may want to go and find out which chapters the plumbers are in, for example, and talk to the leadership teams of those chapters, especially if they're close by, if they're in the same town or the next town over. Get in touch, maybe go visit that chapter and let them know, hey, I noticed that you guys have a plumber. We've been looking for a plumber for a long time in our chapter. If one comes to visit this chapter, please, can you send them, if they're in conflict, send them over to our chapter, because we would love to have them visit our chapter. So it's another great way to cultivate visitors for your chapter. So before we had our Personal Palms report that's on the home screen. You can also run this Personal Palms report, let's say, for yourself or anybody else in your chapter. This is especially helpful if you happen to be on the membership committee. But if you wanted to look longer than the 1 year that is showing on your home screen, you can go ahead and choose a longer period of time. I can go back to, let's say the beginning of my membership, and I can see my week by week and total activity going all the way back in time, and look at some nice grand totals there. The last report that I'm going to show you today is the member details reports. Now, one of the things that we're taught in the member success program is that we should be doing a gains exchange before we sit down to a one-to-one with another member of our chapter. Now, the gains, of course, stands for goals, accomplishments, interests, networks, and skills. And traditionally, what we would always do is to fill out this form that has our goals and accomplishments, etc., on that form, and then we would, well, in the training, we are told to fax it to the other person. I'm not sure how many people still fax things back and forth, but with BNI Connect, it makes it a lot easier. As long as you have your gains filled out as part of your profile, we can go ahead and either go to, let's say, go to the View Member Gains. One thing I could do is to go to my own name here. I could maybe print this out as a PDF file and email it to somebody else. I mean, I could always copy this and paste it and drop it into an email. Or I can look this up for somebody else in my chapter that I might be having a one-to-one with. And if they had their goals and accomplishments filled out, I would be able to do this gains exchange without a fax machine. All right, we're getting right to the bottom of the hour, and there's one more very important thing that I wanted to show you. And that is that once you start finding some of your favorite reports, you can customize the start menu basically to get to these reports a lot easier. Now you'll notice on the left-hand side here you have the My BNI Business and it's highlighted. You also have My Network, which will bring you to all the social media components. This is where you also find your documents that your region is sharing with all of the members. You'll also see a chapter menu here. Now the chapter menu, what this is you can create shortcuts to any function that you have access to in BNI Connect. So let's say that I wanted to make sure that I had that, one of the reports here in my shortcut list. I would click on Configure, and let's say I wanted the Register a Prospective Visitor function in my list. So I would click it on the right-hand side. It puts it over into my active list on the left-hand side. And let's say I wanted that at the top of my shortcuts. I could drag and drop that all the way up there. Say I don't really want this Add a Visitor or Manage Visitor anymore. I want the Register a Prospective Visitor and email my chapter, and let's say I want the email visitor invitation there. I can go ahead and submit this. Close it. And now when I go back here, my shortcut menu has changed. So if I need to get to, let's say, email my chapter, I can just click on this chapter link, email my chapter, and it brings this report right up for me so I don't have to go digging for it. All right, so we are at the bottom of the hour here, so let me see. We do have another question here. Drew says, training information on the PALMS report. Is that something I should be entering, or does the VP enter that? So when it comes to the training information, with the CEUs, so the CEU credits, the statistical number of CEUs that you have, that is done by submitting a CEU slip. For example, after our webinar today, you should go into BNI Connect, make sure that you click on Submit CEU Slip, and make sure you submit a quantity of 1 for today's BNI webinar. Now, when it comes to that information showing up on your profile, so in the Personal PALMS report, for example, you'll see the listing. In order for them to show up here, that means that you would have had to register for and attend a regional event, and that gets done by your regional office. So they would have to mark you as attended the regional event. It's separate from CEUs, however. So if you see something missing there, just get in touch with your regional admin or your director consultant, your executive director, and they can manually add those things to your profile. So does that make sense, Drew? All right, let's see. Kathleen says CEUs. Is this only BNI CEUs, or do we do industry CEUs? This is only BNI CEUs. So anything that's, for example, the ones that are in here, they're going to be the BNI webinars or the BNI podcasts or SuccessNet, going to a leadership team training or a member success program. If you read one of Dr. Meisner's many books, those are all CEU credits here for BNI purposes. So you wouldn't be putting in your, let's say if you're an accountant or a lawyer or something like that. All right. I would like to open it up for any questions at this time as well, any additional questions. While you're thinking of any questions, if there's anybody that does need to leave immediately, thank you so much for being here on the call today. I am going to go through and answer any additional questions. But I just want to remind you that it is being recorded. You can find it on youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. You can also find it on the support site by clicking on the question mark. And I would also absolutely love it if you could give us a like on Facebook. So it's facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. And we do all sorts of things, webinar announcements and reminders, and we share stories up on BNI Connect. Tips and tricks and all sorts of things. So I would love it if you could give us a like up there as well. All right, let's see. We have another question here. Kathleen says, can we go back and input these for ones we did not know that we needed to put these in? So for the CEU credits or for the training records on your profile? So for the CEU credits, that's up to you and your vice president as far as tracking the actual CEUs, whether or not you historically want to go back or if you just want to kind of start over again and start from scratch. Again, that's something to check with your director consultant and your chapter VP. As for the training history, again, because your regional admin will have to put those in. I mean, I like my trainings showing up on my profile, but that's more of a personal and regional decision there. All right, do we have any more questions? I love questions. This is what I do all day, every day. I answer people's questions about BNI Connect, and I would love to answer yours. They can be on these member tools and reports, or it can be on anything else in BNI Connect. Happy to help in any way that I can. While you're thinking of any last questions, one thing that I would like to say is a good referral for me is if you found today's webinar useful, please refer these webinars to your other chapter members and people that might be in your regions if you're a director consultant. You can see the full list of webinars on the support site. Our very next webinar is going to be next Wednesday, so 6 days from now. We're going to be talking about the visitor process in BNI Connect. So everything from one thing that you guys already saw today, inviting a visitor, through the registration of visitors, all the way through the follow-up of visitors. That will be next Wednesday. Again, another half-hour webinar at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. So please do recommend that to your other fellow chapter members, or if you're a regional director consultant or admin, please do let your regions and members know about those webinars. All right, Kathleen, she says, as always, great job. Love to have these and attend, and thank you so much for being here, Kathleen. It is a pleasure having you. Julie says, does membership training count towards CEUs? And yes, on the CEU slip, you would want to go to the Member Success Program here, if that's what you're referring to, or if you're doing a leadership team training, those would be CEUs as well. Bonnie says, thank you for an easy to understand explanation of the tools, and you are very, very welcome, Bonnie. Thanks again for for being here. Let's see. Karen says, I am on the membership committee and want to know how to pull up the letters that need to be sent out for members that miss meetings. So the letters are something that do have to be done on an individual basis. They cannot be emailed. They do need to be printed out and sent via postal. If your region, the document sharing is done on a regional basis, and that's because a lot of the documents do need to be customized. The way to find them in BNI Connect is to click on My Network, and then in the upper right-hand tile, it says Documents. These are all of the documents that your region is sharing. So if hopefully they've put the letters up there for you. So just click on More, and this will be all of the documents that are in your region. So you could do, start typing up in this refine box here. And I just started typing letter, and here in my region, our executive director has shared the control letters with us. So I could download the control letters, and now I have them here in Microsoft Word. I can edit them, and I can send them out. If they are not in there, then again, you need to contact your regional office and let them know that you're looking for them. Maybe make a suggestion that they put them up into the Documents section. Julie says membership committee training or education committee training. Again, I would probably look at those as far as CEUs goes. Go back to my BNI business here. So usually that's part of a leadership team training, but what most people do is if you look at the credits per course, you'll notice that it's roughly the amount of time that was spent in hours towards credits. So for example, most BNI CDs are 45 minutes to an hour. That's why it's 1 credit. The podcasts are about 10 to 12 minutes apiece. It takes about an hour to listen to 5 of those. So that's 1 credit. So I would pick one that is closely related to the number of hours that you spent at the training and use that as a guideline for the CEUs. Does that help, Julie? All right. What other questions? That was the last question that I have listed, but what other questions do you have? All right. Doesn't look like there's any more questions. Everybody knows everything. I love that. All right. Well, again, thank you guys all so much for being here today. And again, I'd love to see you on future webinars, and please let your chapter members know about them and recommend them for me. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Have a nice weekend, and happy connecting.